You know what's really good? There's good news right now, and it's good news for free speech. It's good news for those who want rational political discourse, and it's really, really bad news for the woke $50,000 a year digital journalists who write about their opinions and get paid a lot of money to do it. I'm talking about the good news that is these media companies fizzling out of existence because they're calling themselves journalists. They openly oppose the First Amendment and free speech. No, they're not journalists. Please stop. They're giving journalism a bad name. Okay, there are a lot of problems going on at the New York Times, the Washington Post, and these big media outlets. Fine. But I think we can all agree the biggest problem are these woke rage bait outlets that crank out nothing but hate and vile and smears and then get called credible. You know what Wikipedia, these Wikipedia editors, you do realize that Vice, Vox, whoever else, they don't have fact checkers. I can't speak. I know Vice didn't have fact checkers when I was there. This is my understanding. I could be wrong. I witnessed no fact checkers. When I was at Fusion, I witnessed no fact checkers. Okay? These companies don't employ them. They don't make the phone calls. They write articles. They press enter. That was my experience. That's what I witnessed. So how is it that these woke trash articles are somehow credible? They're not. Please stop. Well, I'll tell you what. Welcome to the Washington Post opinion section, where Richard Stengel writes why America needs a hate speech law. And it's really funny. One of his arguments is, the world is dangerous, therefore we must give authoritarian control to a guy we don't like. You know what's really been bothering me lately? The Second Amendment advocates have brought this up all the time. How is it that you can point to the government, the Donald Trump Republican-controlled government, and say they're evil, bad men on the far right, and we must have a resistance? However, we also must give them all our guns. How does that make sense? Yes, they're tyrants. We should give them our weapons. The other thing that's happening, okay, you have Mark Zuckerberg saying, I will not police political speech. We're going to allow politicians to run ads. They then get all angry. They get all angry because apparently Mark Zuckerberg met with some conservatives like Ben Shapiro, and they say delete Facebook, this big viral trend. Simultaneously screaming that Mark Zuckerberg is having secret meetings with the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro, and simultaneously pushing a conspiracy theory that the Daily Wire is allowed to break the rules on Facebook because of this. And then they turn around and go, but Mark Zuckerberg should police political discourse. What? This is so insane. No, don't give authoritarian controls to these lunatics. Look at this. Why America needs a hate speech law. No, it doesn't. You're nuts. When I was a journalist, I loved Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes' Jr. assertion that the Constitution and the First Amendment are not just about protecting free thought for those who agree with us, but freedom for the thought that we hate. When you were a journalist, yes, you're not anymore. But you know what? The joke I made is, why don't you form a group? You can call it the Coalition of Journalists Opposing the First Amendment. There are so many of you who oppose the First Amendment. They rail. These people are writing stories claiming Mark Zuckerberg should police speech. He is a billionaire in control of an international, it's an international multi-billion-dollar corporation. No, Mark Zuckerberg is not elected and should not be dictating what is true and what isn't. Why are you offering him up power while complaining about who he's meeting with? These people are insane. You know what happens then? Let's say Mark Zuckerberg really is a conservative. He's not. I don't know what Mark Zuckerberg is. Mark Zuckerberg's political ideology is that Mark Zuckerberg should be in charge, and that's about it. But he should not get this power willy-nilly. No, we regulate against that power monopolization. It's bad for all of us. But I guess if you want him to be in that control, if you want Donald Trump to be able to police your speech and Mark Zuckerberg to police your speech, you know what? Fine. Don't let me stop you. But here's the problem, man. See, I operate mostly on principle, but I also must admit, this is a personal thing here for me. I don't want Mark Zuckerberg or Donald Trump telling me what I can't say. That's terrifying. Why are you arguing with me about this? Why do I have to debate people on the left about why we shouldn't give major corporations and a Republican the right to police our speech? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. Look at this. He says, but as a government officially traveling around the world championing the virtues of free speech, I came to see how our First Amendment standard is an outlier. Even the most sophisticated Arab diplomats that I dealt with did not understand why the First Amendment allows someone to burn a Quran. Why, they asked me, would you ever want to protect that? Because if you own it, it's yours. You can't steal someone else's Quran and burn it. You can't steal someone else's Bible and burn it. But if you buy it, it's your property. And guess what? It's actually illegal in a certain regard to burn a book. If you're in public on the street and you start a fire, that's reckless endangerment. They can actually say, hey, you can't start a fire here. And there are certain circumstances where burning a flag is allowed, but the police might still say you can't start a fire. It's not about your speech. It's about you starting a fire. You own the book. If you have a safe space that's legally allowed to start a fire, because we're talking about committing an act that can cause destruction, you can go in your backyard, you can burn the book. It's your book. You do what you want. Now, there are environmental regulations. You can't burn too many. You can't get a stack of Bibles and light them all on fire because they'll be like, dude, you're polluting the environment. You're making life worse for everybody else. Our rights conflict with the rights of others to a certain degree. You have a right to speech, but when you're causing a physical impact, things start getting murky. This is what courts are for, okay? Why would you want to protect someone's right to burn a Quran? Because it also provides them the right to burn, Nazi propaganda as well. Do you get the point? What you know is it's you know what? I'll put it this way, Richard. I would love for you to actually get your law or amendment or whatever passed, because then we can promptly burn your writings, and you can't do anything about it, and we will ban you, and you can't do anything about it. I'm kidding, by the way. It's a fair question. No, it isn't. Yes, the First Amendment protects the thought that we hate, but it should not protect hateful speech that can cause violence by one group. You see, this is what they're doing. It's one thing for you to command someone to do something or to tell someone to do something. And it's another thing if you're saying, I hate Twinkies. Look, if I say I hate Twinkies, you can't get mad at me if someone goes to a Twinkie factory and starts smashing Twinkies. I didn't tell them to do it. I just said I didn't like them. Where do you draw the line? First of all, and why is the Washington Post advocating against free speech? You know what? I think we should do this. Anybody who says we shouldn't be allowed free speech, we will start with you. And then we will stop your speech. I would love, you know what I would do if I owned Twitter? I'd be like, Twitter is the free speech wing of the free speech party. And anybody who opposes free speech, let me know. And as soon as they do, delete. Bye-bye. If you don't like free speech, why would I give it to you? It was a thought that I had. I have this idea for a conference I wanted to do, where basically it would be something on the importance of free speech. And what we would do is we would have a microphone with a kill switch, and I would hold a remote kill switch, basically just cuts off the receiver. And then I would be like, who wants to debate why we shouldn't be allowed free speech? And then right in the middle of their point, turn it off. And then I'd be like, oh, I didn't hear what you said because you don't have free speech. So your argument doesn't exist anymore. Isn't it funny that you would give up that power to explain why you were right? He says, it is important to remember that our First Amendment doesn't just protect the good guys. Our foremost liberty also protects any bad actors who hide behind it to weaken our society. Yeah, we know that, which means we need vigilance. It will be worse if man, think about this. He's talking about the Internet Research Agency and Russia. Do you know what happens if you lock down free speech? The Russians adapt and exploit the current existing system, get people angry about not being allowed to speak. You can't stop loopholes and attack vectors. This is someone saying, we're under threat, therefore we must restrict the rights of Americans? Are you seriously calling out the First Amendment? The Russians understood that our free press and its reflex toward balance and fairness would enable Moscow to slip its destructive ideas, into our media ecosystem. When Putin said back in 2014 that there were no Russian troops in Crimea, an outright lie, he knew our media would report it, and we did. What? What are you implying? That the state should determine what we can report in the news? He's not just talking about hate speech laws. He's talking about ending freedom of the press, period. Washington Post, you should be ashamed of yourselves. How is it that you can claim democracy dies in darkness and simultaneously call for the darkness? I'm not kidding. He knew our media would report it. And that's called light. You're literally advocating for the government to suspend the freedom of the press. That's partly because the intellectual underpinning of the First Amendment was engineered for a simpler era. Aw, really? The amendment rests on the notion that the truth will win out in what is supreme. No, it doesn't. You're making this up. This is terrifying, insane, authoritarian rhetoric. There is no underpinning idea that the truth will win out. The point of the First Amendment is to restrict the government from taking away your right to express yourself. The right to a free press, to religion, to assembly, to a redress of grievances. And I always miss this one. There's 5, right? So you have your freedom of, did I say speech? Freedom of speech, assembly, press, religion, and redress of grievances. There it is. Those are enshrined in the First Amendment. That says the government cannot infringe on those things. You're now arguing something that was never brought up, the marketplace of ideas. That's not what it says. I don't care what your interpretation is. The idea is that as an individual, we are free from the government telling us what we can or can't say. The point of it revolves around religion. Okay, you can believe what you want. This country was founded partly by people who wanted to follow their own religion. You would take that away. Washington Post should be the first one out. Let me read his conclusion because it's a waste of time for the most part. He says, all speech is not equal. And where truth cannot drive out lies, we must add new guardrails. I'm all for protecting thought that we hate. No, you're not, you liar. But speech that incites hate, but not speech that incites hate. Whoa. What is speech that incites hate? You see, there it is. I want to show you this manipulation. Why America needs a hate speech law. He starts by saying, we shouldn't have people burning a Quran. And some people might say, yeah, there's no reason to burn a Quran. But by the time he gets to the bottom of it, the final conclusion is speech that incites hate. You see? That's the next level. He's not talking about hate speech. He's talking about speech that might make someone later hateful. Hate speech is literally saying why you hate a group of people. Speech that could incite hate would be saying something like, the people in my house are messy. That's not hateful at all. However, it might make you say, I hate messy people. I hate the people in your house. You see the game they're playing? Washington Post. If I ever would advocate for burning a piece of literature, it would be this. But you know what? I don't. I think everyone should hear this, and we should know exactly what the Washington Post is willing to publish. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m., podcast at 6:30 p.m. This stuff really grinds my gears. I'll see you next time.